life happens. We occur things, and we need an emergency fund from tires or a roof. I mean, there's several different. Anything can be an emergency and it's an unexpected occurrence.
Yeah.
So, rule of thumb is for a savings account or an emergency fund is.
Hey guys, we're here for another episode of Next Step, and today we are talking about money. We are talking about finances, and today here I have my friend Eric Dellinger here to tell us about money. So Eric, can you give us a short, brief introduction of yourself?
Yes, my name is Eric Dellinger, and I work at a firm here in Albany, Georgia, Strategic Wealth Group. I'm a financial service professional I've been with them for off and on a little bit for about 6 years, so I've been doing this a little while.
All right. So Eric is a financial planner, so I think that is awesome, and I thought you would be the perfect person to actually kind of help us, guide us as on finances. So let's just jump in there. So can you tell us what is a budget and why do everyone need a budget?
A budget everyone definitely needs a budget, but you need to put it on paper. It's a plan to put your financial affairs in order and to get your financial well-being correctly, like your expenses, your debt. You need to know where you are monthly, and some people like to break it down weekly. It really depends on how you get paid. But you want to know how much money you have coming in, how much you have going out for sure, and where to set things aside where you can save money. There's a budget is probably the most important thing I'm not just going to say for young adults, but for people in general.
Yeah. And because I talk to so many young adults and be like, well, I don't need a budget. But then they were like, I'm always broke. Well, I'm like, well, you probably do need a budget because you need to see what's coming in, where's your money going, even if it's just Taco Bell or whatever else you spend it on. I think it just like you said, give you direction of like, what's reality? Like the reality assessment. Like if you're broke, why you're broke? Let's go back to like what's going on in your money, especially if you work, because it's going out some kind of way.
Bills and expenses equal a budget. So you definitely, it's going out. You got, the amount you make, you determine, and the amount you have going out, and you determine, and it is important to first establish that, put it on paper. I can't stress that enough, really. Put it down so you can look at it and reference it if you start to have struggles in an area or start wondering where your money's going, make a pie chart. Find out where you're spending your extra money. You can never not be detailed enough in a budget to, money it's not the most important thing in the world, but somebody told me it's up there with air. You got to have it.
That is true.
So,
I think about when you think about young adults or even teens, it's just about a habit, creating a habit. Like you said, I love like putting down on paper, like, this might sound a little nerdy, but for me, I get excited when it's budget time for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to see where my money is going. Because when I was younger, I didn't really think about it. That's why a debit card was always dangerous for me because I would be like, swipe. But then when I started dealing with cash, you're like, oh, this is all I got left. Like, I can't go purchase this thing. So it does give you a reality, a sense of what's happening so you can make a conscious choice to change or add or do different things.
Sure, put it on paper, but you also have to follow and be obedient. And that things you write down, you don't want to just put it on paper and it's not, like I said, look back at it. I'm glad you like to sit down and do that. Most people don't like paying bills and all that, but I'm glad you have it. It sounds like you have a plan.
Well, I do have a plan, but I also know that was never always my MO though. Like, it wasn't until like you get older and you realize like you want to achieve certain things and you're like, okay, so what are my expenses? What am I bringing in? Am I being a good steward of what I have? And so I think those things are important. And a budget helps me see, like, oh, yeah, you kind of sucked this month. Or, oh, yeah, you did really good this month. And so it creates a discipline. So I love that. So we talk about emergency fund. Why should young adults or teens or anybody, it's not really age. It doesn't have to be tagged to a certain age. Why should we have an emergency fund?
Well, for unexpected, life happens. We occur things, and we need an emergency fund, from tires or, a roof. I mean, there's several different. Anything can be an emergency. And it's an unexpected occurrence.
Yeah.
So, rule of thumb is, for a savings account or an emergency fund, is 3 to 6 months. So if you make, let's say, $5,000 a month, you need 15 to 30 grand in a savings account or in for your emergency fund. Now, there are some people who think and say the 6 month side, which will be the 30 if you're in that numbers we just talked about, and that's for, they say 6 months generally because in case you lose your job. That gives you 6 months of preparation time to find another job, to not just take the first job out there. Or to rebuild a resume. So an emergency fund, it's important, that number sounds a little high, 3 to 6 months, but you can build it before you know it. Yeah,
and I think about, like, when you think about young adults that are working, maybe they're entering the workforce, or even teenagers, putting $10 aside. Like, if you're a teenager and you work at McDonald's or wherever you're working at, putting money aside for if you do have a car and you need an oil change, or you need, like you said, change a tire. It creates a discipline in you because you realize, I'm not really missing that $10. And so when you do get in a corporate world or wherever you end up working, it's like, okay, I can put this money aside because I'm not really missing it. It is going to help me because if my car breaks down, I have it. Or if my computer crashes, I have that to have something go towards it. I feel like a lot of things that we're talking about, just even these two things, is like creating a habit and a discipline to plan for what may or may not happen.
It's definitely a discipline. Being obedient to it. Just the peace of mind you have from an emergency fund. And you say $10. That doesn't sound like a lot. And how do you get up to 3 to 6 months? But think about, you can save it little by little just as much as you spend it little by little.
Yeah.
Here you go, you break $100 bills in cash, a $100 bill in cash, and you wonder where it goes. Well, it happens. Math works out pretty good sometimes. It'll also do, those $8 here, $10, $15 will add right back to that 100. So obedience and being a good steward with your money, that's definitely important.
And it gets you to think longevity, because I think so much of us are so instantaneous. So it's like, if I can think, like, if I put $10 every time you get paid away into a bank account, or, decide I'm going to save this much and make a goal for it, and you do it, one, it gives you a sense of like, dang, I really achieved that. And I think in two, it's just like you said, like, well, if I can achieve this, then I can do that. And it gives you that peace of mind. If something did happen, you have money for it, rather than not and having to have to do other stuff you may not want to do. Or lose out on stuff.
Yeah. Most people's stress comes from financial situations and money and not having a savings account. And what happens when we don't have an emergency fund? And then we start creating debt. We have to go borrow. There's a peace of mind knowing that you have borrowing power, but you don't have to use it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good, Eric. So we just talk about, like, debt. Well, let's jump into, like, a credit score. Can you explain what a credit score is and why it's important to have a good credit score?
A credit score is a temporary reading of your past performance of how you've managed your debt. It's what banks, any lending firm, that's what they look at. And it can be the higher the rating, the better interest rates you're going to get, or whether you qualify or not for, a credit loan. It's important how you pay your bills, because the credit score, it shows all your lenders, it shows everyone how you have paid and handled your bills in the past. Mm-hmm. So you can't judge the future, but the past is there.
Yeah.
So they will definitely, it's important that, one, you fall back to that budget and the monthly bills and expenses, and you pay things on time, and you pay your debt.
Because I think too, like, credit score when I was 18, like, oh, credit score, no big deal. And you get all these credit card things in the mail, like, oh, you can sign up and da-da-da-da. And then, you get older and you realize, okay, one day you want to buy a house. One day you're going to want to buy a car. And the first thing they pull when they run you is your credit score.
Yeah.
And if you have a good credit score that, like you just said, shows the history that you pay your things on time and you're good, that your debt ratio is not too high. So, like, that's a big one that come into play with student loans as well. Mm-hmm. So, like, all my college peeps, I hear you, like, you graduate, you have student loans. So all that plays into your credit score. So it's really good to think about, like, just don't. So when I was a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, but once upon a time, I used to work in management at retail, and we used to be like, you got to sell people credit score, or not credit score, like you got to get them to sign up for a credit card. Mm-hmm. And the interest rate was like 26.99%. And they were like, well, you saved 20%. That's nothing.
Right.
That's only a couple bucks. And so if you get this card and you don't pay it, it's in the fine print, you don't pay it, they're going to charge you interest if you don't pay it by a certain time. Mm-hmm. Then you get charged interest. So you might pay double than what you originally even put on the card because of the interest rate. So all those things are important to know and think about.
Having a good credit score is great, but like you're saying, use good judgment, discernment when it comes to, there's a difference, I think, between good debt and bad debt. I mean, just because you want it don't mean you need to go out and get it because you can, because you have a good credit score. But all of it falls back to a budget. If you know your budget, you know your plan, and you pay your bills on time because you know your expenses and what you have coming in and going out, your credit score is going to be good. And the budget is the basis, the foundation to starting, as a young adult, to putting everything in order. So you've got your financial affairs in order, and like we talked about, that freedom, that sense of freedom, that peace of mind, and that's important.
What advice would you give a young person that say, hey, I don't have a credit, they don't have anything on their credit history? What advice would you, or tips would you give to recommend for them to start to build up a credit history?
I think, there's several ways, and several people explain them differently, but student loans are important. If you've got your student loans, that's the first thing you want to start paying when you can. When you're finished, you start pay those, and you pay them on time. That is the way to first easily establish a great credit, because it is important. If you don't have any student loans, I think you go get a credit card. You sign up for a credit card. Usually they will do things like they will base it. If you want to put $500 in the account, then they'll give you a $500 credit, and then you just pay it on time and things like that. And to establish a good rating, you can try to talk to a special lender and get a vehicle. I mean, there's several things you can do, but don't go open up many different lines of credit. Try to focus on one, whether it be a credit card or a car loan or just the student loans for now. And don't go trying to say, I want to build my credit by look at all these great different lines, because you will affect your debt to income ratio you were talking about earlier. So again, you use judgment and discernment and stay in that budget, but we got to set something aside to begin, because credit is important, and the world operates basically
on it. I always been told, like, if you are a young person, you want to establish, go get a gas card, like something as simple as sign up for a gas card, use it, and then pay it off. Because if you're setting that money aside anyway to use for gas, that's like a way to slowly build up enough credit. But again, please y'all, don't go out there to these Like, I love retail stores. I used to work at one, but look at the interest rate. Something at 26%, that's high.
Yes.
That's extremely high. And so be like what Eric is saying, like, I would advise be thoughtful. Look at the interest rate. You have these cards that say you can do 0% for the first 18 months but then look at the interest rate after that 18 months, because a lot of that too can be extremely high. So just really, use wisdom, I would say, when you're signing up for that.
Yeah, you said it. Be obedient. Ask for help. If you don't know, ask. Somebody knows. There's plenty of people who made mistakes and could easily show you, the right and the correct route to take. But don't be scared to ask for help. It's especially as a young adult, getting out into the world. Just talk to your parents. Talk to your friends. Just ask them what to do, and be thoughtful, like Jessica said.
Yeah, don't be opening up all these credit cards, y'all.
No.
All right, and then the last thing, not the last thing. What is good debt? Because I know you mentioned it before.
Yeah.
And so explain to us what is good debt.
It is debt that you have the ability to pay. Like back looking at, I don't need to take on any debts that are outside of my budget. So that's one way to look at it. Make sure you have the ability to pay it, because of what it will do to your credit score, and because it will get you behind, or it will eat into your emergency fund, several different reasons. But make sure you have the ability to pay it. Make sure it is necessary. And there's another definition for good debt, and that is it's debt backed, like we talked about with the one credit card, it's debt backed by assets. So what that means is if you can use an asset to back debt, but generally the debt is paid by the asset, like rental property.
Oh, okay.
So does that make sense? So, the rental property is an asset that pays for itself generally, if it works out right and you have a tenant and you don't have all these other things that dip into your emergency fund there. But that's another definition of good debt. But I would stick to debt that you have the ability to pay.
So you can pay it, it's good debt. If you can't pay it, it's bad.
Generally, that's a bad idea.
Don't do it. And then I know, especially young adults, because I remember me entering the workforce, and, whether it is like any type of full-time job mainly, and I think part-time jobs offer this too, but like a 401k, and I've heard some young adults say, well, I don't want to do that. I want to get all my money now. And I'm like, no, please put in your money into a 401k, and there's different options you can do it, especially if your organization is going to match it. If they, you could do 3%, 6%, all these different ways. So you can correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, but I would say, can you tell us why it's important to have a 401k?
Number one, to save money for your retirement. That is the purpose of the 401k. The 401k is, like you said, you match, most of the time, in most cases, your employer will match a certain percentage, 4 to 6, 3, like you were saying. That's accurate. They will match it, so that's free money on your money, and it goes into it's you don't have to pay taxes up front. You pay taxes on the back end. Okay. So it's a qualified plan. So it is good, because if they match it, whatever your percentage is, when it breaks down, $100 per week you're putting in it, and they're putting 100 with it, that's a 100% gain on your money. So definitely contribute at least what they are going to match. And then there's other ways to go back, and when you can diversify that and build some other things, like you need to do the budget, you need to save money, contribute to your 401k, and then you got to protect your family and your assets as well with other types of insurance needs on the other end.
So I want y'all to hear, he said free money.
Free money.
Free money. So, I think it's such a good thing. So it really teaches us about longevity, like planning for your retirement, planning for that day when, you're out of the workforce and you want to live comfortable, and you've given 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, and you want to live a nice life, that's the 401k that you will pull off, you'll live out of. So yeah, if you are a young adult and you are going into the workforce and going to work for corporate and they're offering that, please take it. Please don't be like, I want my money now. No, you wanted to save longevity. So I think that's awesome.
It's all a plan. You just put down a budget, make your plan, put it together. I remember there's that saying that failing to plan is planning to fail, and it is accurate. So
yeah, I was talking to another young adult the other day, and she was talking about moving out and all the other stuff. And I was like, so what's your plan? Because you got to pay utilities, you have to pay rent, you got to go in with a deposit. She has pets and some other stuff was said. And I'm just like, these are the things you're going to have to really think about. And think about, go in with savings, because I was telling her, what happens if you lose your job? You still sign a year lease, so you still have to pay your rent. That's your responsibility. So it is something, if you want to be out on your own, to think about. And it's doable, because I know plenty of young adults that do it and they kill it. But it's also those people that are very diligent. Going back to what you've been saying this whole episode is have a plan. Write it down. Look at your expenses. And I also encourage other people, look how other people live. If you want to live like that, ask what they're doing.
Yeah.
Start asking questions like so, because, sometimes everything that glitters isn't gold either. You don't know how somebody's living behind the scenes. When we look at social media, they live in this life and it's really not. But really just, what I hear you're saying when I walk away from this is just have a plan, make sure it's something that's written down, because that would be the thing you can always go back to.
yes, I think so. Be obedient, take ownership, be proud of yourself. And the way to do that is to be obedient.
Yeah.
To the plan, and have somebody help you. Don't, contact someone, contact a friend, put it on paper, ask questions. You said, how do people do it? How do they have that nice life? Learn from them. Ask them. They'll tell you they work hard. They will share.
Yeah.
They're not going to keep it a secret.
And I was just talking to the guys behind the scene here, but get a podcast if you don't have anybody. There's so many podcasts on money and wealth and management. So I feel like we're in a day and age where there are virtual mentors everywhere. If you want to learn something, get a podcast. Listen to a podcast. I'm pretty sure there's a podcast for it. There's apps to show you how to save money, how to help you money. So there was ways to do this. So thank you, Eric, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we hope this was very informational for you guys, and hope you enjoyed it. And remember, save, save, save. You can do this. All right, guys. See you later.